Well, welcome to another edition of the Week in Sports Cars podcast, part of the Marshall Pruett podcast collection, of course. And as always, with thanks to our friends at the Justice Brothers, TorontoMotorsports.com and the Canadian Sports Car Championship. Stephen Kilbey is with me this week. We hope to have a second edition this week featuring Marshall Pruett ahead of the Long Beach Grand Prix. It's a very busy time indeed for MP. But Stephen, we're literally just packing up our bags on Monday to leave Barcelona after a week here with the European Le Mans Series. Their season opener happened yesterday, and that was some race. But it is, of course, a paddock packed with all sorts of people in the industry, teams, drivers, manufacturers, representatives all over the place, and of course, race organisers. It's not been quiet, has it, on the drawing together threads of what might be to come?
No, it is a proper where do you start job with this. But it has been an awesome week, and so I love the ELMS, have done for a long time, and yeah, it's in rude health at the moment, isn't it? You come here, and we saw as the week continued, and we did the testing, we did a couple of days of that, we did the Le Mans Cup prologue, and then we got into the race weekend proper, and all of a sudden fans showed up, and in massive numbers as well.
We're going to come to that. Let's give a few teasers for what's to come.
Okay.
From what we've gathered here, what we've gathered elsewhere in the last couple of weeks, we've missed a couple of editions of the Week in Sports Cars. So amongst the things that we can say that you are writing at the moment, news of a brand new and I think entirely unexpected GT car.
Yeah, properly out of left field, but looks good. We've seen an image, haven't we, of the car? And I think it's going to turn some heads when that launches.
That will not be too far away. So that's number one. Number two is talk about Hypercar and GTP. To say that it's a melting pot at the moment would be an understatement. So I'll make one statement and we'll see what you want to fill in with. Maybe no names at the moment because we're working on multiple stories. It is fair to say in terms of the good news, if you're listening in from the fan base for sports car racing, trust me, there are more potential programs to come than you think there are. And I'll go even further, and I think you'd agree, there are more than we know.
It really does look like in the next few years, the biggest negative at the top end of sports car racing is what on earth do they do with the LMGT3 class in WEC?
Yeah, I mean, I think there is real concern 2-3 years down the line with so many brands looking to join that there might well have to be a rethink about just exactly how the FI World Endurance Championship kind of looks in terms of the class split, etc. There are still some concerns around just exactly what happens to some of the existing manufacturer programs. But that was always going to be the case. I don't think that's is in any doubt. So watch this space for, at the very least, a bit of a review of where things are and where things are likely to go. Okay.
Yeah.
The biggest news, though, in terms of new cars that we can say are absolutely expected, didn't come from Hypercar, didn't come from GTP, didn't come from LMP3, that we're going to talk about the new cars we saw this weekend, and didn't come from any of the GT classes. It's come from LMP2.
Yeah, so after the previous proposed rule set was scrapped at Le Mans last year, we heard absolutely nothing for months. Kept asking questions of the chassis suppliers, of the tyre supplier in Goodyear, kept talking to vendors involved, and there was no news at all until suddenly the engine tender dropped. And
Powertrain tender.
Powertrain tender, I do apologise. And then the chassis tender followed that shortly after, and all of a sudden it's coming together quite quickly, and we're going to find out a lot when we get to Le Mans in June.
So what we can say at the moment is there is significant interest in both tenders.
Yep.
Okay. We're not naming names yet because you're not quite ready to put your gatherings on paper, but the tender it's been expressed incorrectly in some places. It's a maximum of 2 chassis suppliers.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's down on 4.
It's not 2 chassis suppliers. It's a maximum of 2 chassis suppliers. The powertrain, and the reason we're careful to say it that way, is for the engine, gearbox, the basically electronic controls, steering. It's basically all the bits and bobs you need as a standard package in whether it's one or two different chassis suppliers. And that's fundamentally different from the current Gibson technologies. They won the tender for the current 4.2 litre V8 engine. It will be a turbo engine. It will be a car that is slightly heavier than the current car, slightly longer, I think I'm right, than the current car, slightly wider, very slightly wider.
It's the dimensions and the difference in the dimensions are pretty marginal.
Yeah, very marginal, I'd say. So a little less power, a little more weight, central driving position, which is a surprise.
That's been requested, which philosophically completely goes away from the traditional two-seater sports car. And we started to see a little bit of preparation towards that actually here in Barcelona, because one of the LMP2 teams I spoke to was asked by the organisers to do some driver change practice timed with them, and with a driver asked to climb in and out from both sides of the car.
Now we've seen that done with emergency planning, but that wasn't this.
No,
this was something different.
This is them just essentially getting a first idea of what it's going to take to get drivers out of the unnatural side of the car.
So the tenders issued by the FIA in conjunction with the ACO and IMSA as partners. They're in play now. The final date for those is at the end of April, and we're expecting an announcement for both of those tenders at Le Mans.
Yes.
Now the other quick thing to say is it will not be the case that any of those chassis suppliers also corner the market with powertrain. You can only have one. I can tell you, one thing I will say is in talking to a very senior source at Orica, indeed, is that they made it clear, yes, we've considered both, but we believe the correct way to go is chassis. So Orica are not in the powertrain bidding process, and that's significant because this is where we segue into the next part of LMP Futures or Current, is that they are, of course, the powertrain supplier for LMP3. And the brand new 2025 LMP3s made the competitive debut, all of them at Barcelona this weekend. So we've seen Ligiers in very large numbers, we've seen Duquesnes in somewhat smaller numbers, we've seen Ginetta, and we've seen Ades. All four represented in the Michelin Le Mans Cup, three of them no Ades in the European Le Mans Series. So let's talk about the immediacy of these things. I think the look of the cars is pretty good.
Yeah, they look great. I actually don't mind the engine now. I think it's a pretty nice sounding engine. It's significantly quieter. I mean, it was a bit jarring almost sitting there in ELMS testing and not hearing the sort of semi-constant drone of the old V8. Kind of going to miss that a little bit, but as a whole, I thought it was a very impressive debut for everyone in certain ways. Certainly for the engine, and there was plenty of concern about cooling. And I must say, it wasn't a particularly hot trip to Spain, was it? It was warm at times, but was
not
certainly not.
So.
It was not plus 30 degrees at any point. So we didn't see these cars stressed as we might do over the summer. But reliability-wise, they were all pretty much there. There were some niggles mechanically, electronically, early during the test, but that's kind of to be expected at this point. But once the racing actually got underway, they all coped pretty well, didn't they?
They did, and we saw, I think it was a Michelin Le Mans Cup qualifying, the lap record for LMP3 at Barcelona smashed to pieces, 1.2 seconds quicker in ideal conditions.
Yeah, and there wasn't an expectation going in that these were going to be significantly quicker than the previous gen.
And I think in racing terms, they're not significantly quicker, but there is potential there for it. I'll expand on the part to do with the engine note, the soundtrack, if you like, of LMP3. We've got Ferrari 296 GT3s in the Michelin Le Mans Cup, more of that shortly. It's not dramatically different from that sound. It is a turbocharged V6, why should it be different? But the Toyota 3.6 litre twin turbo is not that different from a Ferrari as they pass.
No,
little louder.
Yeah, there are, in this current era, there really is a kind of almost moulding of just they all do sound pretty similar at this point. Yeah. And actually, it's really nice to hear the give. It's going to be a shame, I think personally, when the LMP2 formula switches to turbocharged engine, because I do love the sound of the current Gibson, and it stands out even more now that the LMP3s aren't quite as punchy when it comes to the decibel-ometer.
Let's talk about the overall package for the European Le Mans Series this year. Absolutely packed, rammed full paddock, 130 plus race cars, including 20 from the Porsche Carrera Cup France, which was the third support, if you like, in addition to the Le Mans Cup and the Ligier European Series. Ligier European Series has got a big boost this year, 26 full season cars and some new names, new teams. Benoit Treluet, multiple Le Mans winner, has a brand new team here in Michelin Le Mans Cup. Mathieu Vazevière is part of the ownership crew behind a new team there. It's great to see it all in such rude health. We're going to carry on talking a little bit about LMP3s. ADES in for a full season for the very first time. And the Michelin Le Mans Cup this year, by the way, for the first time ever, we've got all 4 existing chassis in a single series for the full season.
Yeah, and 2 LMP3 classes for the first time as well, with the addition of the LMP2 Pro-Am and the essentially the Pro field. LMP3 Pro-Am and LMP3 in Le Mans Cup. Didn't necessarily make for a cleaner race, did it, Graham?
I'll say it out loud, I've said it before. There's a fair number of people involved on track with that have got reason to be ashamed of themselves. The driving standards were remorselessly poor. And by the way, you know, directed at some internet experts here, it wasn't necessarily the ELMS causing the chaos. One of the ideas of bringing the Pro class in was to just calm things down, and that's generally speaking a silver class. There's 2 silver golds in amongst them, but the initial problems were being caused by the pros just trying to be too pro. Yeah. At a point where, frankly, it just wasn't smart to do it. It didn't end with, but it could have ended with, an absolutely horrendous incident in the GT3 class with the Iron Dames. Vanina Ricks, welcome back Vanina at 50 years young, having just handed over the car to W Series champion, as was Martin Garcia, leading the class under pressure from an AF Corsa car behind, and to be blunt, the driver in the Ferrari totally messed it up, clipped the rear of the Porsche, unsettled that to the point where it took the shortest possible route into a concrete wall, mercifully protected by a single row of tyres, which the whole thing came awry and ended up in the middle of the track as well. Big damage to the car, fire, Marta pretty shaken up. Delighted to say that this morning we've seen good news from her. She spent a second night under observation in hospital, as well she might. It was a big hit. Huge congratulations to the circuit intervention staff, the marshals, the medical staff, and for that matter race control. They went to red flag very, very fast, impressively so, and well done as well to the following drivers. It could have been a much worse incident.
I don't know how she wasn't collected, to be perfectly honest. The car was on fire in the middle of the track. Half the track was blocked by tyres, and there were multiple prototypes that came within inches and were blindsided by the fact that she was strewn in the middle of the circuit.
The plus side was almost that she took air after the impact, because they will have seen, because the cars behind her were in a straight line, they will have been able to see at least part of the incident, and they were all off the throttle, but there were, you're absolutely right, Stephen, 2 or 3 inches away. There's a sequence of photographs taken by our colleague Dave Lord, who was on scene, and it's no less horrifying in the stills than it was in the video, and I was commentating on it, and it was one of those heart and mouth moments. But Marta, no major injuries. I'm sure she's still very shaken up. I'm hoping we'll see her back at Paul Ricard. And the good signs there are that the Iron Dames in Michelin Le Mans Cup form are in fine fettle. More of them shortly. That pairing, by the way, 2 of 13 female drivers in that paddock this weekend, and we had female drivers in all 4 series, and in 3 of them they were pretty darn competitive. We had a podium finish for Keller Valcapese's daughters, Amna and Hamda, in the Ligier European Series. We should have had a podium finish at worst for the Iron Dames in the Michelin Le Mans Cup, and we'll come to the other results as we get to talk about the European Le Mans Series. What's next?
Yeah, well, I think it might be worth a few more words on LMP3 with some impressions of the gaps between the cars and where we think they are now. 'Cause it is very early days still, but it was a real chance to see them all in action and kind of compare and contrast. The big thing you got to say is that Ligier's got strength in numbers. They delivered cars very early.
25 new cars.
Yeah, and a lot of these teams have done a lot of testing before we got to Barcelona. So, yeah, they're not turning cartwheels just yet at Ligier, although they were incredibly pleased, proud, encouraged by what they saw. 1, 2, 3, wasn't it, in the podium lockouts in both races across the weekend. Cause for worry for Duquesne?
Well, their pace, no doubt about it. They had pace without a shadow of a doubt.
WTM led, didn't they?
They did, and we saw pace from the Gebhardt car in Michelin Le Mans Cup. We saw pace from the RSGP cars as well. But unfortunately, it's a bit of discipline, bit of bad luck let them down. Less convinced at the moment that there are pure pace issues or even maybe reliability issues there. But they've not got that strength in numbers. What I would say is all the Duquesnes are brand new, all of them. With the Ligiers, it's 25 new cars across the two championships. The remainder of the cars are with the update kits because you can, from the 2020 spec cars. So it is very early days, but necessarily you're guided towards the two cars that we hadn't seen at this level, really, in Michelin Le Mans Cup, let alone ELMS level. And they were the Ades, two cars for Nielsen Racing, both of which finished, I think I'm right in saying.
I would need to double check, but I believe so.
They were certainly running until kind of well into the order. A little off the pace.
Actually, early in the race, made some significant progress.
Colin Noble, I think, was up to about 8th place overall. I would expect Colin to squeeze the very best out of the package.
They have got good drivers at Nielsen in those cars, so we are going to see across the season.
They're a little chunkier, a little heavier than the other cars, not least because they do have a quick change rear end assembly, which one of them had the clunk to the end of the back of the car earlier in the race. We might have seen in practice, but we certainly again saw in the 2025 cars. It happened to the Ginetta in ELMS, didn't it? That it got a substantial biff in the rear and needed both of the legality panels changing.
Like a wedding car, didn't it? On its way back to pit lane.
Yes, indeed. But it's clearly still a point of vulnerability for most of these cars. That it does effectively, potentially take them out of contention if they take a rear end hit, which you've got to say, very often they do. The flip side is the manufacturers, the chassis manufacturers, sorry, we appear to have a bird's nest in the roof in this B&B. The flip side is they're looking to keep costs down and weight down, and because of that, they've effectively left them with it's a semi-quick change rear end, but it's not that quick. You do need to change the corners, but there's some kind of sub-assembly that I've seen on a couple of the cars that can come into play. Ginetta, car in both with DCAR Engineering, and if you're going to choose a development partner, DCAR is a good call, with some support from the other partner team that Ginetta have in Europe, CMR, Classic and Modern Racing. We had management group on site as well with Mike Simpson around. I would say, in terms of the relative pace, and for that matter the reliability, they would be very encouraged.
Yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised with the performance. They looked closer to Duquesne than Duquesne did to Ligier throughout the week, I thought, which is a fantastic marker of progress. And they were on course for a really strong finish in ELMS before that. Really unlucky, the kill switch.
They're not sure yet what actually happened. Certainly, I mean, we've seen this before with other cars where you got unlucky and get a ball of rubber striking the external kill switch. And in this case, it was the kill switch and the extinguisher. So whether or not it was an internal problem or an external problem, we'll find out. They did have some growing concerns about the way the car was performing deeper into the race. I think we saw a bit of that with the pace falling off a little, but this is where they need to be. For me, across the four cars, I think all four are reasonably good looking cars. As I say, the Ades looks a little bit chunky, but I think the Ginetta looks a really good looking thing.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And And I think the best news out of it is that none of them, on pace at least, are miles off.
No.
We're not at a point
Nobody's
where
embarrassed.
anyone's properly panicking. It wasn't a complete disaster anywhere, which is great. And that's exactly what you want to see if you want to see this variety going forward.
Well, Paul Ricard with the long back straight is going to be interesting, and a bit of a
For
point.
Duquesne, that's going to be a big week.
Bit of a point to what we might see at the Road to Le Mans races. Remember, the other quick change here, with the exception of Silverstone, is we're back to 2-hour races because of the better fuel efficiency of the turbo engine, and that's good news for the teams.
Yeah, but it didn't lead to a calmer race, did it, Graham?
It most certainly didn't. No, it was. It's always a challenge for Johnny Palmer and myself to call those races.
A challenge to write about them as well.
Dear me. So that's Michelin Le Mans Cup, and that brings us coughing, spluttering, and into European Le Mans Series. I think it's fair to say, between you and I, one of our favourites.
Yeah.
We love all of our sports car racing, but ELMS, it's always too close to call. There's a lot of changes this year. There's new teams and new drivers.
Lots of drivers change teams as well.
Indeed. So there's all sorts of things up in the air in LMP2. LMP3 we'll sort of leave alone for the moment. And LMGT3, some changes there with 3 cars that we have not seen in the ELMS before, the Corvette, the McLaren and the Mercedes-AMG joining. And of those, the AMG was extremely competitive. And then was looking like it was potentially in there for at least a podium finish until a late problem for the car. Martin Berry, by the way, switching from Aston Martin, looks to be one of the very much the stronger bronzes this year. It's great to see that
him and
too.
Logan Hamilton were brilliant, and I think it's definitely worth saying Fabian Schiller, who's the pro in the car, the works driver from Mercedes. High praise from Andrea Piccini and the Iron Lynx guys at the job he's done to help both Lorcan and Martin through a very new challenge with that car.
In his drive, I'm a big fan of Fabian Schiller. Knew his dad back in the days when he was running LMP2 cars at Le Mans, and met Fab when he was very much a young kid. But I've been extremely impressed with what I've seen with Fabian as he's pushed forward to try to get to where he is now as a member of the factory roster of Mercedes-AMG. But to do that, he's had to do a lot of emerging talents have had to do, which is work with teams in Pro-Am squads, and almost to a man, they've all said what an exceptional talent he is, not just behind the wheel, but also in helping to get them find the best from themselves. So this, I think, is a good fit.
Yeah, and really excited to see him across the season. It's great to have him in the LMS. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, for McLaren, a few moans and groans about the balance of performance for them, but they've got work to do with a new look driver squad there, without a doubt.
And something to be clear about is that the bronze there, Michael Birch, was a late call up to this program. Yeah. He wasn't originally set to be in the car. The entire program, to be fair, for United was the decision came late that they would do it. They've now got 5 McLaren GT3 Evos at their disposal. I think they've made the smart choice in deciding to use a third one racing throughout the season.
So there might well be a test program to come.
Yeah, and there's clearly more to come from Michael. His expertise, if you will, is in historic racing.
Yep.
So there is going to be it's a completely different world, jumping from historics to a modern GT car. But he's got people around him that are going to get him up to speed very quickly. Wayne Boyd, I thought, was impressive.
Yep.
He's new to GT racing, and he's on this kind of journey with Michael and Garnet Patterson. All of whom are new to the car. But I thought, there was some encouraging signs through the week.
Yep.
And United are, along with Iron Lynx, you've got to say, Mercedes and TF and Corvette, seem more and more dialed in with their package every time they go out.
TF had their own challenges. Their initial intended car for the LMS destroyed the week before the race in a very early testing shunt at Spa. They had 2 days of testing planned, and unfortunately the car was destroyed up at Radeon, and I mean destroyed, which meant that we unexpectedly saw a yellow Corvette, supposed to be a silver Corvette for the season. That's because the 82 in the LMS was the 81 car from the FIWC. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking to Tom Ferry about why is this then, on day one of the prologue, he was awaiting the call from his team that the replacement brand new car, which will become the new 81 for the WEC, was due to land at Heathrow. That has happened, so they've been able to regroup, and we should see things back to where they should have been in time for Paul Ricard in about a month's time for TF Sport. But again, they were not very happy about the way that the balance of performance had been rolled out.
Yeah, I mean, it's 6 brands, isn't it, for the first time in a long time in Le Mans Series, and it appears there's going to be a period of adjustment. And the other thing to say is that the 3 new brands in Mercedes, McLaren and Corvette are all bringing single cars, and they're up against the likes of Ferrari and Porsche, who have got multiple cars apiece to throw into the party.
Let's talk about the sharp end of LMGT3. We've already talked a little bit about the good form until problem hit the AMG. Number of Ferraris in the mix, Porsches in the mix. But I want to focus on one of them, and it's the winning car. And I want to focus on them for one specific reason. We saw the ELMS crew, Michel Gatting, Sarah Bovey, now as a silver driver, and Celia Martin, their new bronze driver for the European Le Mans Series, try out during the Asia Le Mans Series. And in fairness, not great.
But you've got to say they got that out of the way.
Celia Martin has taken... I had a quick chat with Sarah Bovey as I was just leaving the circuit yesterday, and principally that conversation was about how Marta was doing, and they were all pretty shaken up by that. But almost her first utterance after that was what a big step Celia Martin made. She was in the mix.
Like a different driver.
Oh yeah, in the mix for pole position. Martin Berry took that pole in the AMG. But a great battle. And we talked on comms about one of the things that's been such a joy since we saw the change in emphasis in ACO Rules racing for the bronze drivers doing the qualifying is these emerging battles between 2, 3, 4, bronze drivers that generally start the race. Typified, of course, by what we saw over a couple of years with Ben Keating and Sarah Bovey and the really good natured rivalry and needle there was between the two of them. But now we've got 2 more, because we've got Martin Berry, who's clearly got pace in that car, and I think there's a couple more that could join them. Celia Martin, I was blown away by her pace and by her consistent pace. She gave them all a hard time, and it didn't drag her out the car the second her time was up. She did the full 2 stints and came out of that leading the race.
Yeah, and took the lead really quickly. Just got in the car, start the race from the front row, straight past Martin Brown. She didn't have to sit and defend for 2 hours. She properly laid the foundations for it's just a really dominant performance throughout the race for them.
Let's talk about dominant performances. When we move to LMP3, CLX Racing took the race win from the defending champions RLR with Gideon Henrion, their new pro, alongside the 2 gents, Nick Adcock and Michael Jensen, who took the title last year. CLX Racing took it with the 17. New talent there, Theo Jensen. And I think I'm right, that's his 2nd consecutive debut win. He won his debut in
won
the Le Mans Cup
won
last
Asia
year.
Le Mans Championship, didn't he, over the winter with Breton.
Okay.
Won in his debut in Le Mans Cup last year. He's won in his debut in the LMS this year in a different, in the new LMP3, so not even the same car technically. Mightily impressive.
So
I think all 3 of them were really strong.
But let's talk about Theo Jensen in the same way we talk about Celia Martin as an emerging prospect here. And also, by the way, we talked about Ben Trellier and we talked about Matt Vazivier. We must also talk about Nick Lapierre, because the newly redubbed CLX Motorsport, previously known as Cool Racing, have now a 100% record in the new LMP3 formula, because they took a 1-2 in the Le Mans Cup and took the win in the European Le Mans Series as well. So congratulations to them. Don't want to dwell too much on that, because there's a lot to unpack in LMP2. 21 cars across 2 classes. It was ultimately an LMP2 Pro-Am team that won the race overall, bringing them into a very short list that only otherwise included Racing Team Turkey and TF Sports, who ran that effort with a previous Pro-Am car taking a win. It came because we did have some interruptions, But what we saw there was Mathieu Vazevière on astonishing form, absolutely on a mission. Just dropped, of course, out of the Alpine full-time lineup. I think felt he had things to prove. Oddly enough, his first target in the run to the front was a current Alpine factory driver, and that was Sharma Lacey. But that wasn't the last car he passed. They threw the dice at the last pit stop, which came quite close to the end of the race, changed left-hand tyres on that Orica. And that pretty much changed what had looked like an already pretty good script for that race.
Yeah.
It was a very unusual, against the form book from last year, top three.
Yeah. No, it really was. And
In fact, top four, including top three in LMP2.
yeah. And for Matt Vax, yeah, he clearly has something he feels he has something to prove, doesn't he? Because he said after the race, I was asked by my engineer to just hold station, you've got the top points for Pro-Am, you don't need to go for this. And he just, it was so quick to the front.
Just ignored him.
I looked down, literally started typing that the Genesis-backed EDEC Orica had won the race on the final lap. I look up, oh no, here comes Matt Vax straight up the inside at turn
So
5.
kudos to Matt Vax, because that was spectacular at the end. He had, in fairness, he had way more grip, but God, he had pace.
When he's on
anyway.
song, he's as good as anyone in the world.
Yeah.
Matt Vax. He really is. And just a real gentleman as well. And I can see why Francois Proto keeps putting him in his cars, because it's moments like that that could be, towards the end of a season, be the difference between you winning a championship or not.
So they
Those sort of
win
performances.
LMP2 Pro-Am and the race overall. They don't take points off the LMP2 winners. That was the second place car and an historic second place, because for the first time in LMP2 in the European Le Mans Series, we had a female driver that took that win, Jamie Chadwick. Jamie, I think, would be perfectly happy for us to say that she was the least quick of the three drivers in it. Danny Godella.
She used silver.
Yep, Danny Godella was pretty impressive. But pretty impressive doesn't really cover the form of the youngest member of that squad. That's Mathis Jobert. Now, we've seen a little bit of this kid during the week.
Wow.
Let me tell you just a story about this. I urge, if you are a follower of the European Le Mans Series, and for that matter of the FI World Endurance Championship, Goodyear, who of course put tyres on all the LMP2s, the LMGT3s,
Do it very well.
yeah, have revamped their Wingfoot Award this year. They've revamped it to bring more fans into the equation, which means that you, the fans, can vote live during the last few minutes of the race on social media against a list of 4 nominees for each class that they put tyres on. And we're asked for those nominees before the race, and then obviously anything that happened during the race, you can change it. Why am I saying that? Sorry, I should have explained. I'm one of the group that actually does the nominees. So I'm asked live by Goodyear and by LMEM to put forward the 4 that would go to the vote. There were some pretty blindingly obvious ones, but the one that I did put in before the race was Mathis Jobert, and I'm pleased to say I did. And there was some debate in the third hour about whether or not some of the excellent performances we saw in the first 3 hours of the race would have knocked anybody off. And the one that was looking set to be knocked off, because he hadn't got the car yet, was Mathis Jobert. And I did urge everybody behind the contest, who were very keen to get stuff moving, they're excited about the prospects of their new Wingfoot Award format. Give this kid 10 minutes. And boy oh boy, they gave him 10 minutes, and there was no doubt that he was not going to be knocked off that list. That was a very, very impressive debut in LMP2.
It really was. And what's really telling is who he was put up against. He is a silver. He was asked to qualify the car when they could have put platinum ranked Danny Diller in, and that was part of the strategy all along. He is part of the trajectory program for Genesis Magma. He's being evaluated for a potential hypercar seat. So they put him in to qualify, did well in that, but then put him in for the final stint in the race when all of the golds and platinums were in around him. And I remember speaking to a colleague Jens next to me in that final hour, looking up at that restart that happened just before hour 3 came to an end, looking at the list of people he was around, and I just sort of said, this is going to be interesting. He's got current Genesis Hypercar factory driver in front of him,
He did.
Pipo Derani.
Yep.
He's got Charles Malaysia and Alpine factory driver behind him. You've got Matt Vaxavier's there. You've got the likes of Tom Blomqvist in car. You've got, Tia Pocher,
Yep.
who's a Peugeot talent.
But he's
an
a Peugeot reserve driver and an F2
ace.
champion.
Yep. Who's going to come out on top with this?
And the answer was...
he managed to find a way past Pipo Derani when he was balked in traffic.
People got balked in
didn't-
traffic, but it was an excellent and a clean move, anticipatory move from Jobert.
You've got to be there to make the move.
You most certainly do. So massively impressed by him.
And he wasn't overtaken again by Derani.
It wasn't overtaken again by Derani. In fact, he was only overtaken at all on, as I said, on fresher tyres. Pretty much it was the last lap of the race, wasn't it? Penultimate lap of the race.
Had the DKR Janetta not conked out with the kill switch problem, and we not had that final safety car, they'd have won it.
Yeah.
They'd have won it. They had that gap after that final pit stops.
We said earlier we love the European Le Mans Series. One of the reasons we love the European Le Mans Series is because you do get to see these emerging talents. We saw it years ago with Job van Uter. We saw it with Melty Jacobsen. We are seeing it still with the likes of Gillian Henrion and others in LMP3, and we're seeing it now with Matthias Jobert. If he continues on that trajectory, he could very well become one of the very youngest hypercar drivers.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote it in my sort of post ELMS column feature on DSC. So it reminded me of Malte Jacobsen at this very race last year when Jacobsen was at the front of the field and he held back Alex Lynn, a hypercar driver, and we came away from it like that was a masterful piece of driving towards the end for Algarve Pro Racing. He looks ready for hypercar, and you've got to say it is of course early days. There's a whole season ahead, but speaking to the guys involved in this, it was all very much, this is the learning year. We want to take stock, get some data, come back to it at the end of it, analyse where we are. We're not expecting to go out and blow everyone away, and they did. So if they can keep it up and they can fight for this championship, and Jalbert's not a one race wonder, which I very highly doubt he is, judging by everything that I've heard said about him, boy oh boy could this be fun.
Quick word for a car that didn't make it. I'm pleased it was the debut in LMP2 Pro-Am of AO by TF. That was the defending championship winning squad, but moving down now to LMP2 Pro-Am. With Spike, the LMP2 Dragon, with PJ Hyatt, brings Dane Cameron and Louis Delatraz to the fore. They look like they're up for a really good result in their debut as a squad together. It was a throttle sensor, I think, though.
They were second at the time, weren't
They were, and I'm not sure they could have done much about Matt Vax.
No.
But it would have been good watching.
No, exactly, and we all know just how talented Louis Delatraz is at the end of that race. Who knows what could have happened if he'd had fresh tyres and they'd have gambled as well.
Yeah.
That'd been fun. But that was a real shame because they had a fantastic week.
We talked already, did we talk about just the other big change at Barcelona? Last year, Barcelona, bit of changeable weather, but race day was beautiful, and our TV compound is behind the main grandstand, walked over there on race day to be surprised by the arrival last year. Fair number of fans. This year, oh my God.
Yeah, no, it was genuinely a big race meeting for Barcelona.
I mean, the circuit and LMEM are saying there were 30,000.
And not free tickets.
No. I mean, they told us at the start of the week they'd already sold 6,000 tickets prior to the weekend. There was certainly way more than that there, but they're saying 30,000 there. Pretty much believable. To give you a few ideas, the queue for the autograph session extended pretty much all the way down the paddock. The same for the grid walk. I think, was it 5,000 people allowed on the grid walk? Is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
And there were times when we could not get to the TV compound through the spectator tunnel. It was just too full. There were some of the grandstands, turn 1 and the one out at turn 10, pretty full throughout. Best news of all, absolutely loads of families amongst them. And I saw some very happy kids with mum and dad and older brothers and sisters making their way happily back to the metro station. There's a metro station right there. It's ideally placed for the Circuit de Barcelona Catalunya. Excellent effort by all involved.
What's amazing about it is, and I think you put the Genesis Magma Racing branding on the EDEC number 18 Orica to one side. We've been at ELMS races before, haven't we, Graham, where there has been literally no fans.
Yeah.
Literally nobody in the stand.
Yeah.
Maybe like 5, 10 people, nobody at all. They've built this audience through social media, through good race broadcasts, just through the promotion that a lot of the competitors put out for themselves and what they're doing. There's not a single factory team on that grid.
Nope.
And
Fair number of
we've
factory
got
drivers, but,
and
yep.
to get that many people through the gate when there's not big marketing push from OEMs behind it is really impressive.
It's showing that this bow wave from Hypercar,
It's lifting all boats.
it most certainly is. And here's my call to action. Wherever you're listening to this podcast from, if you're either in mainland Europe or you're looking to holiday in mainland Europe, then take a look at the timetable, the calendar for the European Le Mans Series. Cost of tickets is nothing. It's kind of 20 euros. I think
What you get?
Some tickets are sub 10 euros at some of the venues. I'm going to specifically address the fans in our home market in the UK. European Le Mans Series is coming back to Silverstone.
They had a presence, didn't they?
They did. They were there to learn exactly what it is they need to do, but the nuances that are different with that. Come to the race for 2 reasons. Come to the race because you know what? It's an absolutely awesome weekend. It's back-to-back racing. It's an awesome weekend. I think there'll be quite the show in the paddock. The access
Don't
you'll get...
adopt the mindset of, it's all right, I'll hang out for when a WEC race comes in the future.
No, don't do that.
Do this.
Okay? Now, we are absolutely the anti voices here to, if you turn up, WEC will definitely come. That's not a definite. There is no plan in place at the moment that says it's coming to Silverstone in 2 or 3 or 4 years' time. But you can be absolutely assured, if it's a desert for fans this year for the European Le Mans Series, that's a darn good reason not to look at it. So you can be a good part of the reason why the FI World Endurance Championship takes another good hard look at the strength of the UK market, specifically in terms of the fan base. And we know there's a massive fan base for sports car racing. Please come. You'd be more than welcome there. We'll talk more about what it is that we'll be doing to support that efforts as we get closer to the race. I would hope we can do something there in terms of a bit of live twiskage in the paddock maybe.
That's worth the price of admission alone, isn't it, Graham?
Just to meet you.
I was thinking more about you. You're the star of the show.
Yeah. But please come along. It's a great place to watch sports car racing. You can walk all the way around that circuit, and there's plenty of time to do so in a full day of racing. And you would be more than welcome. Anything more before we wrap it up?
I think we just, it's worth, you mention that hopefully soon you get a chance to chat all things IMSA with MP before he goes to Long Beach, but that is right around the corner. Imola WC is all of a sudden right around the corner. The start of World Challenge Europe is there.
Yep.
We're in that part of the season now, certainly in Europe, but also elsewhere, where all of a sudden there's 3 or 4 major races on every weekend minimum. And it's really exciting, isn't it? We just had the British GT opener, didn't we, last weekend? Some really good racing at Donington Park. And it's the weather's turning, the fans are turning up.
It's a nice time to be a sports car fan,
It really
or a race
is.
fan at all. So Imola, just a quick couple of points there. Massive crowd last year. Let's hope for more again. No major changes expected on that grid. Just I think Ben Barnicoat's going to be on IMSA duty, so we're going to see Esteban Masson in the Lexus for that weekend. Some changes too to the grid for the Long Beach Grand Prix and the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship.
AO doing GTD, aren't they?
They are. They're going to be at GTD with Johnny Edgar in Rexy for that one.
If he's anything like he was a guitar in the GT3 car, watch yourselves, IMSA fans.
Indeed.
He's coming.
And then beyond that, as we've seen before, we're going to see Vasser Sullivan doubling up with 2 cars in GTD for their efforts too.
First street race for the Valkyrie, first IMSA sprint race for that car.
Absolutely right.
Awesome.
So all sorts of wonderful if you're going to be trackside or watching the IMS WeatherTech Sports Car Championship.
I'm jealous of anyone who's going to be trackside at Long Beach to hear what the Valkyrie sounds like on a street track.
Absolutely. You'll be frightening children and small animals. But, we're going to be there for the FI World Endurance Championship. That was a cracking race meeting last year. I don't expect any different this year. Old-fashioned, old-school track. Drivers love it. We love it. And all sorts of fun and games to go with. That's it for now. From Stephen and from myself. Thanks very much, Stephen, for taking the time this afternoon. He has been Stephen Kilbey. I've been Graham Goodwin. We're, as I say, going to look to see whether or not we can get a quick second edition of the Week in Sports Cars later this week with Marshall to talk about Long Beach and all things IMSA. With thanks again to our colleagues. Oh, I should have said, by the way, do check out R.J. O'Connell's last couple of stories about all things Canadian, because we do have quite a lot of family affairs in sports car racing, but the Ali family, Fareed, the father, Adam and Daniel in particular have been making their way in sports car racing in Europe of late, and there'll be more of the same with that. They have tales to tell of being part of the Sports Car Championship Canada paddock, their efforts in radicals in the past. And there's a two-parter, which is a cracking read from R.J. O'Connell that just tells anybody that might be considering that package just what a good choice that would be from the fine folks behind Sports Car Championship Canada. Do take a look on Daily Sports Car. For now though, with thanks to, and we'll name them first, Sports Car Championship Canada, to the Justice Brothers and to TorontoMotorsports.com, this has been the Week in Sports Cars, part of the Marshall Pruett podcast collection, and we will speak to you hopefully later again this week.